Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Scott Luton and Greg White with you here on Supply Chain Now. Welcome to today's live stream. Gregory, how we doing?
We're doing quite well. It's a very relaxing weekend.
Yes.
I think we call it bumming around the house, something like that. I don't know. I was trying to describe what it was I did this weekend, but it was not a lot.
Well, that's good. It's good to recharge the batteries a bit.
So,
And weather-wise, today is
wow.
absolutely gorgeous in the Atlanta area, right?
Yep. Today I'm working on my tennis swing in the afternoon. So
Nice, nice. Well, we look forward to getting word of your next big championship win. And one of these days, I'm gonna get a chance to hold that gold-plated trophy from your from your last winning season. But hey, I digress. Today, folks, it's all about, as y'all know, the Supply Chain Buzz, where we share some of the leading stories across global business. We're going to be discussing a variety of news and developments today. And, folks, you're in for a treat. We've got a special educational segment towards the end of today's show focused on top things business leaders got to keep in mind when it comes to selecting new technology. And we get to hear from one of the best, been there, done that thousands of times. Of course, I'm talking about Mr. Greg White. And hey, folks, hey, get ready because we want to hear from you as well. Greg, looking forward to that tail end segment here today, right?
yeah, I think that's going to be a new. We're sort of testing this out as a new kind of educational segment of the buzz. I mean, once you get a buzz on, it's a good time to learn, don't you think? So, new and education all in one, folks.
Piece of cake. That's right. All right. We're going to share a couple programming notes here in a second. But yes, big thanks to Amanda and Catherine behind the scenes helping make it happen. Amanda says, Happy Buzz Day. Say hello and let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to connect the dots there. Hey, Shelly Phillips, tuned in with us here today. Good morning. I hope you get to stay a little longer next time you're in Denver. Shelly, I will. I look forward to that too. And hopefully we can meet up. And Greg, we owe Shelly a big thank you. She had some high praise. I saw somewhere on LinkedIn that she shared Supply Chain Now is the world's best supply chain podcast. And Shelly, really
Wow.
appreciate you being a part of that. Greg,
Thank
how
you.
do we owe her like a nice steak dinner or something, I think, right?
Well, we sent her a new football coach, so what more could they want, right?
That's right.
They may be pulling off quite a coup there in Denver, right?
Yes.
So, Sean and Rex Ryan potentially as the DC
For the
defensive.
Broncos.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. Okay. Man. Well, some would say there's nowhere to go but up based on recent performance. But hey, Shelly, most importantly, thanks for being a part of what we do here. Okay, so Greg, I'm going to shoot through a couple of program notes,
Yeah.
and then we got some listener feedback we're going to share. So let's share a couple of these things here. I'm going to start with the U.S. Bank Freight Payment Index for Q4 2022. Now, Greg, you and I, along with our friend Enrique Alvarez and, of course, Bobby Holland from U.S. Bank, worked all the way through all this data, right? But, folks, it's free to get your own copy. Dog mark it, spill coffee on it, mark it up, you name it. And you can get that at freight.usbank.com. Greg, if you had to pick just one of your favorite parts of what the Freight Payment Index delivers each quarter, what's one of your favorite elements here?
It's the practical insights from the people who use it and the kind of benefits that they use it from. In this particular episode with Enrique, who runs an NVOCC and also does some ground transport, seeing how they use it and frankly how they interpret it was so incredibly valuable. We changed the
Yeah.
format a little bit too, so
Yes.
if you didn't get to see it, look it up. It's out there. If you follow us, you can find it.
That is so true. And if you can't, let Amanda know. We'll make sure. But most importantly, check out, get your own free copy, sign it up, comes out each quarter, freight.usbank.com. And Greg, that's a good recap there. Okay, moving right along. Let's see here. We had our latest With That Said, which is our almost weekly LinkedIn newsletter. The last one, and I love this Come Fly With Us. It was Frank Sinatra inspired. But
Yes.
we've got so much programming this week and next week. So we're really going to be valuable, and it's going to be informational, educational, and entertaining. Folks, check it out. Come fly with us is our invite from the whole team here to you. And y'all can check that out. I think we're dropping a link to that in the chat. You can check that out there and let us know what you think. And then, Greg, finally, you're going to get a kick out of this. So you and I both, the whole team really, we get a ton of feedback, thankfully, from our listening family across the globe. And I want to share something I got over the weekend. So Tucker Bledsoe, pictured here, I snagged it from his LinkedIn profile, is a student at my alma mater, the University of South Carolina, which has a supply chain management program that ranks high up, I think inside the top 5, if I'm not mistaken, on Gartner's list. So he shared the following. Get this. My name is Tucker Bledsoe. I'm a senior at the Darla Moore School of Business, double majoring because I guess he likes punishment, pain and punishment, operations and supply chain, and finance. I've been listening to Supply Chain Now podcast for the last few months. I want to reach out and thank you for providing great material. And he's enjoying the current events in supply chain across many industries, as well as our talk about food. Greg, you and I are guilty as charged here. Now, he grew up, is from Johnston, South Carolina. That's in Edgefield County, which is one of the counties adjacent to Aiken County. And many of the restaurants, he said, that we talk about, he's eating at, or he's adding it to his bucket list. So Tucker, keep up the great work. You and members of the now generation are what inspires so many of us. And we know that industry is going to be in good hands in the years to come. Greg, your comment here from feedback like this.
Sorry. I'm a huge South Carolina fan. And honestly, something that should be on his bucket list is unfortunately gone, I think, forever from Columbia, which is yesterday's, the greatest chicken fried steak, or I think they say country fried steak in the South, in the world. And That's it's right. A shame that is gone. But it is great to see so many of these young people getting engaged. What a great link up, though, finance and supply chain, because one has so much impact on the other and vice versa. So I think more of that connection in companies is really, really important.
Excellent point. So Tucker, you are going to be quite the capable leader by growing your expertise in those fields. So we look forward to keeping our finger on the pulse and seeing where you go next. And Greg makes a great point. Yesterday's closed a few years ago. It was down in 5 points. It had a famous tub on the top, on the kind of the entrance way with the cowboy sitting in it. It was iconic 5 points restaurant for quite some time. It's a good catch, Greg. Man, you're on it today, Greg.
Dude, if there is a town, if I remember it, I know it because of food. Guaranteed.
I'm with you. Guaranteed. All right, really quick, we're going to try to say hello to a few folks here. Professor Z, great to see you here. Amika tuned in from Cranfield University. Great to see you here. Greg is back with us. Greg, hope this finds you well up there in Milwaukee. He says he's got another snowstorm moving in later this week. Greg, you seen this?
It's hard. I saw my brother is in Boston, and I saw him post something about something, and there was snow all over the place. And it's hard when you live in the South to think that people are still it's going to be 72 here today. That people are still experiencing the depths of winter is unbelievable.
Isn't it though?
It's kind of a transitional time here in the South. I recall one time I went to New Jersey, forgetting that it was still winter up there with no winter coat, and it was 25 degrees below zero and a blizzard. I literally had to buy a coat while I was up there.
Man, okay.
That probably reflects more on me.
Planning, right? Planning. Right. Love that. Let's see here. Abdul Ketter. Great to see you. Good night. Happy to join you. Hey, let us know where you're dialed in from there via LinkedIn. Great to see you. Now, Shelly says the first football games she went to were the Broncos back-to-back Super Bowls. She has stories, but not family friendly. Okay, Shelly, we'll get those out of you soon.
Yeah.
Hey, Gino's.
That's for Supply Chain Nerds Talk Sport.
Yes, that's right. Shelly, we're coming for you. Gino's back with us. Gino, hope this finds you well up there in northern Alabama. Mark Preston from Peachtree City. Now, Mark, I think we shared this last week. He did a great show on how to reinvigorate continuous improvement. We'll see if we can't drop that link there. Mark, I tell you, he's been doing it for quite some time. Greg, we don't go over, though, no matter how much experience you got. What's our threshold?
2 decades.
2
You can
decades.
say more than 2 decades, but never say more than that. I mean, you're welcome to say whatever you want. I just kind of like that.
That's right.
Around 2 decades in the supply chain.
That is
Mine is
right.
around maybe a little more than that, but
Dr. Fomano is back with us. She says, love listening to your Monday chats while making dinner here in Germany. Well, hey, thank you for your service, and let us know what you're preparing this evening. Greg,
yeah,
what were you going to say?
that was my question is I hope it's Schwäbisch food. I'm a huge fan of Schwäbisch food, which is from the
Okay.
southern part of the country in what was then Bavaria. Well, Bavarians would argue still is the independent Republic of Bavaria.
Okay.
Founded,
All right.
founded on all sides by Germany.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, we
Schwäbisch
will.
food is quite good. So,
Okay. Hey, making me hungry already. So,
mm,
Dr. Fomano, will see if she weighs in with what she is preparing this evening. Josh Goody is with us from Seattle. Josh says, and he's talking about yesterday, as I believe, it's a crime to see it gone. I'm with you, Josh. That was a legendary place,
yeah,
not
it
just for the
was.
food. There were some legendary good social times there as well. No more. Can't say anything more there. Hey, Greg Nerf is back with us. One of our,
Hey,
let's see here.
we unbanned him, unshunned him.
I think we said the Jerry Seinfeld of global supply chain. He asked, "Is Greg recovered after that Super Bowl win?" Greg, your response
My,
is
my response is that after watching it 26 times, I have confirmed that the Chiefs win every single time.
trust but verify. I like that,
That's
Greg.
right.
All right. Well, Greg, we got to get to work. These folks are depending on us to walk through a variety of key news stories and bonus today, get some of your expertise in particular for tips on when selecting technology. And gosh, we're doing that, seems like every day these days, right? So let's get to work. And we're going to start, Greg. I'm going to be sharing a few headlines across industry. So, first, as reported by the Wall Street Journal, inflation, well, it's still hanging around like a house guest that has really outstayed its welcome. Now, according to the Producer Price Index, which was released by the U.S. Labor Department last week, U.S. supplier prices rose 6% in January 2023 over a year ago. The Wall Street Journal quoted Kurt Rankin, an economist at PNC, as saying the data is, quote, a setback in the battle against inflation. Today's producer price increases will translate into tomorrow's consumer price, or rather consumer facing price hikes, end quote. Good one there. Check out the link to the article, drop that in the chat. Next up, I want to ask folks, you may have caught Greg's supply chain summary earlier today on LinkedIn. Thousands of people have. He was talking about the semiconductor industry and U.S. efforts to regain ground, supply, and some sort of strategic leverage. Well, in this intriguing article by Steve Banker via Forbes, he talks about how, as the title might suggest, not only does the semiconductor supply chain impact everything else, but it is arguably the most vulnerable supply chain. So here's a little did you know. Y'all check out the article. It's a great read. But Banker states that industry titan, you've all heard of this name, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, aka TSMC, that's not only the world's largest contract chip manufacturer, but get this, it is the only company that manufactures all of Apple's highly advanced chips for their smartphones. Check that out. And you can check out the link in the comments. And then finally, speaking of Apple, its efforts continue at trying to lessen its resilience on China. So here, Reuters reports that Apple is facing some new setbacks, especially as it attempts to ramp up production in India. One casings factory in southern India recently produced at a 50% yield. Man, meaning, of course, that only half of the components met quality standards to be sent on down the line.
Wow.
Now, trade leaders within the Indian government have recently stated that Apple is looking for the country to ultimately handle 25% of all production. It's going to be really hard at 50% yield, but that will change. Currently, that figure, in terms of how much of Apple's production is in Indian manufacturing infrastructure, is somewhere in the 5 to 7% range. Okay, Greg, pulling you back in here, a little quick walk through some of the headlines that stood out to me. Your take.
Well, as you talk about these things, I think about the discussion that Pat Gelsinger had while he was in Davos about over the next 5 decades, supply chain technology supply chains will be more impactful and more impacted by geopolitics than oil reserves and oil production are today. And I have no doubt that that is definitely the case. I would amend that to say that supply chains will become the critical factor in the future, defining the future of humanity because of environmental concerns and geopolitical disruption. So, regardless of whether it's technology or it's food, which is also has its own challenges now, all things supply chain will lend strongly to the future. And we've seen that they can become weaponized over the course of the last several years. So, that's what I think about when I hear about some of these things that you've mentioned here, Scott.
Yep. Now, in your summer today, we're going to talk about a different supply chain summer you did last week here in a few minutes. But man, folks have been eating that up. You've really you've hit a nerve with what you were talking about today, right?
I think so. Look, essentially, that was part of the discussion was around supply chains generally, and I think it's good that Pat Gelsinger at Intel, the CEO at Intel, if I didn't mention where he's from, but identified semiconductors as a future point of geopolitical interest. He says the point. I think not, but it is one of the points and probably one of the driving factors, and certainly one of the critical portions of society. And I think a lot of people are really interested in understanding that. They probably also should understand that a lot of petroleum products go into the construction of semiconductors and the products made therefrom. So I think that's why when I think about these things, I think about the labor supply chain and the educational supply chain, because those are going to be great hurdles for the U.S. because building of semiconductors, for instance, takes a lot of PhD and engineering talent, and 2/3 of all engineering talent in the U.S. is foreign born. And because of the policies of the U.S. government, it's very difficult for them to remain and work in the U.S. So there are going to have to be some other things changed in order to enable that particular supply chain. And you can just see how it continues to broaden out.
Yes, that is more folks should know what you just shared there. I think also water consumption for making chips.
Lordy.
That's where
Right.
the big Arizona investments that we've talked about here. That's the first thing that came to my mind is the
Where
impact
does that
on
water come from?
right.
Yeah, I
But
know. I can't imagine it. And that's where TSMC is making. Yeah, TSMC is making their investments. That's where they are buying and building additional plants. And that article that I got the commentary from, that article is about a company, Texas Instruments, adding on to a Micron plant in Utah, where there is also very restricted water. So
we're gonna have to.
I am at a complete loss where you could find enough water to to manage 300,000 households, basically a city the size of Austin, Texas.
Right.
10 million gallons every single day is what that plant requires.
And maybe there would be optimism you could get it today, but gosh, in 10 years when many of these plants will finally be up and running, I mean, the concerns then will be even further off the chart. So we're going to keep our finger on the pulse of that. I really I love your summaries, as do the rest of social media. So folks, if Amanda and Catherine, if y'all can grab Greg's summary today that we were talking about and just put the direct LinkedIn link in the chat, we'd love for folks to read it and comment. That's the best part beyond Greg's always witty and humorous and in the know commentary, seeing all the reaction. Okay.
Or if Amanda, not any of those things, at least biting.
Right. Amanda is a Dr. Famano, I should say. Steaks. She's preparing as she listens to us. Steaks from a local butcher and traditional German How you say that?
Spätzle.
Okay.
So that is Schwäbisch. That's a Schwäbisch dish. Spätzle. It's like rotini. It's like potato rotini in a lot of cases. That's usually the kind of shape it takes. Almost a pasta, and it is unbelievably delicious. With a buttery cream sauce. Oh man.
Man, so Tucker, if you're listening today, I'm sure we can maybe find a version of that in the CSRA, also known as the Central Savannah River area. That's a thing. But I don't know, maybe not nearly as good as what Dr. Fomano is preparing. Okay, so Greg, we want to, speaking of the summaries, let's see, I'm going to pull up this graphic here because as I mentioned on the front end, you published something last week, a summary last week that focused on this supply chain dive article, which focuses on manufacturers tackling supply chain costs. And you delivered, again, in a way that really resonated with folks. So kind of summarize what you were talking about last week.
Yeah, I think the article itself was talking a lot about forecasting, but while forecasting is a big challenge, it's not the core challenge. In supply chain, 100% of the problem is labor. That's what caused the initial shortages was the lack of availability of labor because of shutdowns and things like that, and the slow return of labor to the workforce. For whatever reason, in the U.S., it was because of concerns about health. It was about massive subsidies keeping people home and without the need to work. And then it was about this generational shift as baby boomers left the workforce in droves, and their younger progeny, Gen X, Y, and Z, said, "We don't want those dirty, dark, dangerous, and dull jobs." So that's a big part of it. But there are a ton of environmental factors, and our race to try to save the environment has, in some cases, inadvertently, I think, endangered the environment in other ways. And what I challenge people to do in this article is to think through that, and in previous articles as well, is to think through that and not shift one environmentally destructive methodology, oil and fossil fuel emissions, for another, scraping the face off the planet to get to semiconductors and batteries for EVs and that sort of thing. I just want us to think ahead this time, right? We have the benefit of knowledge, and we need to think about alternatives. And I have long been an advocate for any alternative besides lithium, cobalt-based batteries. There are other technologies, and we should be spending lots of money trying to root out how to make those feasible.
Well said. Y'all check that out. We included a link to that summary here in the comments. You can check it out. Leave us your take on.
We even got trolled on that one.
Really?
Or somebody looking for a fight over EVs and batteries and that sort of thing. So it's a really interesting, as trolls typically are, less than intellectual, mostly just political positioning or whatever they want to call it. But it was a fun conversation. So, and it was. It's all there in the commentary.
That's right. So y'all check that out. A couple comments here. And folks, we also placed the links to each of the news stories I shared on the front end here, like the one where Apple's facing some of the production obstacles. Y'all check that out and give us your take. All right. So Josh is commenting, as we go back to Utah and Arizona and some of those big chip investments, he says, can't think of a single place in Utah that has a water flow for it. Maybe down near the confluence of Green River near Moab. We'll see, Josh.
This is Lehigh, and I don't know, Josh, where Lehigh is, but there's a Micron plant there that Texas Instruments bought, I think, 2 or 3 years ago.
And then Greg, speaking of Apple, says, we're still waiting, he says, for Foxconn to figure out what's going on with their plant in Wisconsin.
I think that this article that I commented on was fairly short, but as many do, it prompted a lot of thoughts. But in some of the background research that I did, there was an article that talked about, they didn't mention Foxconn specifically, but they did mention Wisconsin plants as well.
All right. So a couple quick programming notes, and then we're going to get into this educational segment here today. I'm really looking forward to it, especially as how relevant technology selection, whether it's big platforms, small apps, doesn't matter. We're doing it every day. All right. So Greg, we have got an outstanding session coming up in about a month or so, March 21st. We got a webinar on 5 tips for creating effective digital content. Now, this is a live webinar. We're not doing that program, that recorded stuff. This is, hey, we want to hear you, and we're going to be sharing some of the things that we have learned and have applied to our journey. And man, Ursula Ringham with SAP and Brandy Boatner from IBM, two true rock and roll stars when it comes to creating content that resonates, right?
Yeah, and you may have heard of those companies. You know,
That's right.
not as prominent in the supply chain now. But
That's right. But folks, we want you to join us. Bring your feedback, bring your questions, you name it. Bring a turkey sandwich if you'd like. We're going to drop a link to register in the chat, and that's teed up for March 21st, 12 noon Eastern time with our dear friends Ursula and Brandy. And then Greg, well, I'll tell you what, before I move forward, any other big, why do you think this matters, Greg? Why is this important, you think?
Well, I can tell you as a technology provider myself, before getting the word out and getting leads into your funnel or getting your knowledge shared, webinar is and has been for a long time the most common way of doing it. We get tons and tons of questions. We do it on behalf of some companies, but many people come to us going, hey, how do we make a webinar effective? And these two companies have been doing it literally for decades, maybe more than 2 decades, Scott. And so we just thought we'd put some of that knowledge out there, share that with the community, and let them learn from it. If they decide they want to do their own kind of digital content production, I think you can always learn.
I agree. And Greg, just to pile on a little bit, we had a wonderful conversation with Jason Hoke and Sean. I can't remember Sean's last name. They've done big things. I mean, like number ones in Apple Podcasts and their rankings. And there's something about getting folks together, like this webinar is going to really be, where we have a very common kindred spirit in creating meaningful and genuine and helpful content, right? It goes, it's like breaking bread with family members, right? As we kind of walk through that and share, what we've learned, what we learned to do, what we've learned not to do, and a lot more. So folks, come join us. We'd welcome you at our lunch table, again, March 21st at 12 noon Eastern time. All right. One other quick programming note, Greg, talk about purposeful. We've got, we've been supporting very proudly, the Leveraging Logistics for Ukraine initiative going on about a year now. Over 670,000 pounds of humanitarian aid have made it to folks in need in Ukraine and Poland and the region. And unfortunately, the need will continue for months and months on end. Well, hey, good news here is folks like Vector Global Logistics, Enrique and Christy and Maureen, they're doing something about it. The next planning session for this very big noble mission initiative is Tuesday, March 7th at 11 a.m. Eastern time. We'd love for y'all to join us. Just sit in on it. If you don't have to talk, you don't have to contribute. You can sit in and connect the dots and see what's going on. Greg, your thoughts about this mission?
Well, I mean, we've all contributed time, effort, or whatever you want to call it, capital to this initiative, and seeing the kind of results that it's getting. Obviously, that is not something that is going to end soon, and has gone on for, I think, way longer than any of us thought it could, and continues to evolve or devolve, whatever, and likely will not be done until Putin can get his little pipeline under his command. So this will continue to cause tragedy throughout the region. It has put strain, not obviously on Ukraine, but not only Ukraine, but the countries that are supporting that. Now there are some concerns that Moldova, a tiny and completely neutral country, may be at some risk because they have some strategic importance to whatever Putin is trying to accomplish. So, keep your eye on this. It's important. This is a grassroots initiative, not a 501c3, but I can vouch for the fact that your initiative, your efforts, your givings will go where they are intended 100% of it. Yeah. No one is taking a single dime of salary or any other compensation for this.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Greg. So that's a powerful vouching statement there, and it's absolutely true. and it's been our honor to support and contribute. And they're a breath of fresh air over there at Vector. Okay, folks, we dropped a link to that. Join us in some way, shape, or form. On a much lighter note, Greg, this just hit me a minute ago. Hit me in the pre-show, and I meant to create a little graphic for it. But I got to share this before we get into our educational session. Amanda and I saw a wonderful. Do you like music documentaries? Where it kind of tells the backstory.
Yeah.
Bands.
Where
singers.
are they now? Kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that.
Well, HBO Max has got this newer documentary focused on Dionne Warwick. And, as a child of the 80s, I knew her for That's What Friends Are For, right? Smash single dedicated to the AIDS victims, right? And relief for them, still raising money for all those folks. But man, this documentary walks through her entire trailblazing and ground-shattering career, and it's really good. And of course, but one of the best things about these musical documentaries is all the tunes they pack in it, right? Old, new, the whole journey. So folks, check it out. HBO Max. I think Amanda's going to save me here and drop a direct link. Y'all check it out if you like music tunes. Greg, Dionne Warwick, was she did you have CDs of Dionne Warwick back in the day?
Well, Scott, probably before CDs. So my parents were huge. They were big time hippies. We also lived in Detroit for a portion of my childhood, and huge Motown fans. My kids are huge Motown fans. And of course, Dionne came out of that era. So yeah, of course. I mean, I don't know how you could have been a kid in the late 70s or 80s and not known who Dionne Warwick was, right?
It should be illegal. If so, it should be illegal.
Well, right? It is definitely to your detriment if you don't. So go back and listen. Yeah, that's great. I did not know that was happening. So
you got to check it out. All right. So Greg, we're getting in, and folks, we want to hear from you. We want this to be, we're going to, as Greg has shared and lived, he's been through thousands of these technology selection implementation processes. So we're going to get some of his perspective and expertise, but we want to hear from you as well. Let us know what you're learning, have learned to do and what not to do when it comes to technology selection, because as we said, business leaders, they're doing it. We're all doing it all the time, right? From big ERP platforms, those selection processes that might take, months to, all sorts of applications, middleware, you name it, that might be quicker, more expedited. But regardless, there's some best practices here. So Greg, core question here. What are three things that business leaders got to keep in mind when it comes to the selection process for new technology?
That's a great question. I want to reiterate a specific part of that question, which is the selection process for new technology, not the entirety of determining the success of your technology implementation, but these are three things that you have to consider as you are selecting the process. And to me, number one is completely forget about a mandate around what the solution must do, right? Instead, you want to identify the goal, the underlying challenges, the day-to-day problems, the financial impacts, and the other impacts to your business, and present the problem, and then find and expect practical, well-founded, creative solutions, and accept only goal-driven solutions, not tactically or operationally driven solutions that are supported, enhanced, or even taken over or run in the future by technology. Because what a lot of companies do is they come out with this 46-page questionnaire as if they know how to fix their own problem, which if they did, they could have done. And I think that in thousands and thousands of implementations, some enormous, some small, some a week long, some years long, I've experienced universally that if a company knew how to solve their problem, they would. And so you see you see these big specification documents that say, hey, this is what we're looking for. Can your product do this? Can your team do this? Can it do that? And instead, I think, Scott, I'm a big begin with the end in mind type person. And I think it's really, really important to think about what you're trying to accomplish and the challenges that you face or the hurdles that you must overcome today that keep you from getting there. So I think it's important to tackle your selection from that perspective.
So if I can, that
Yeah,
first
sure.
one, first of the three, and folks want to hear from you as well. The first one I think is a $1 billion idea, because to your point, Greg, I think one of the points you're making there is folks may be setting off on the wrong foot to solve pain. They may be setting off on the wrong foot because they think they know what they need to do, but
Right.
that's wasted time. That is a bad start, and that's a bad answer to the why. Is what part of what I'm hearing you say there.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, throw away the RFP, right? For anyone they're called RFIs, RFPs, request for proposal, request for information, whatever. Throw those away, and instead enunciate the problem that you have, the goal that you're trying to seek, and that will change the entirety of the process, and it will greatly simplify it, especially when you do the next couple things that I'm going to advocate. Number two, being first, okay, be willing to change your ways. You are likely in this situation in whatever is challenging or subverting your business goals because of yourself, right? And recognize that process change may be necessary. Hell, it's likely, right? For any technology implementation to be successful, you're going to have to change the process because it's not just the technology. Technology is just a bigger hammer. And a bigger hammer will still drive the nail in the wrong place if your process is incorrect, right? So acknowledge that it's likely internal, it's process, it's business design driven. It could even be job design driven, but recognize that and also enunciate that to your service provider. These are the challenges we have with these processes, the results therefrom, et cetera, et cetera. Expect to have some sort of business analysis conducted in order to help you find the right technology, but also in order to enable that technology.
Yep.
So to these 2 points, I want to go back and combine them for this purpose, and that is that anyone who you seek to purchase technology from should know your industry, know your business at least at a high cursory level or at least at an industry level, and know what businesses in your industry are typically trying to accomplish. And when they know that, and if they have real live business experience, then they will be much, much more valuable partner to you.
Okay, man. We're going to owe you a consulting invoice before we finish up this hour.
Yes, Scott. I'm preparing it right now.
Well, hey, before so Greg, I'm going to pose this to you.
Yeah.
Right? Would you rather knock out number 3 and then we'll go through some of the ideas that folks have, or would you rather me share a couple of what?
Yeah. Let's talk. Let's hear what the crowd has to say.
All right. So Shelley was agreeing on your first point.
Well, definitely want to hear that. I'm glad we interrupted it for that. Thanks, Shelley.
But seen it time and time again. I think that she submitted this when you were talking about how folks and companies think they know what their problem is, right? Let's see. Jonathan's talking about
often they know the problem.
Yeah.
The problem is thinking you know what the solution is. Right, because you're so often too ingrained in your own processes and people structures and politics to be able to get that sort of blessing of naivete that you can get from an outside party.
Excellent point. Blessing of naivete. What'd you say? Blessing
naivete.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, say that 3 times fast.
I need another pot of coffee, I think. All right. Jonathan says customizing too much and it compacts the issues involved. Your thoughts on over customization, Greg?
Yeah, well, that's going to go right to my third point, which we don't
Okay.
need to jump to yet. But I think
Okay.
that's an excellent point. Is that customization also comes from mandating the solution, right? Point one or point two often cause that problem of,
Yep.
too much customization, because companies are, and even monumental failures of largely ERP type solutions, and some are world famous, right? Hundreds of millions or billions of dollars wasted
Yep.
in complete failure that nearly bankrupts companies, is largely the fault not of the implementer or of the technology company, but of the client who continues to try to force fit a new technology into total crap processes.
That's a technical word. Total
Technical.
crap processes,
Yeah.
TCP. All right. So let's see a couple of other quick comments here. Shelley talks about how, side note, thousands of companies were down for 24 hours last week as NetSuite Boston servers were down. How about that?
Yeah.
Gino says it's really a difficult job to define when technology is outpacing your ability to
Mm.
implement.
A good point goes to point number two also, which is adoption is the key to success.
Mm.
And not only is this a great opportunity to assess your processes, but also to assess your people and to upskill or uplift both, right? Because you're right. Sometimes it is, and that is one of the biggest problems. That is the number one objection that I have ever heard in thousands of technology implementations and sales processes, frankly, is I don't think my people are ready for this. I don't think my people are strong enough for this. And the chances are largely because of the fact that we're looking past needing to change their processes or their job structures, probably drug structures as well, job structures, and the politics within the organization. They may not be ready for it. On the other hand, you will be surprised at how many of them have just simply wanted to do their job better and have been held back from being able to do that and would gladly embrace making their job better. Part of that adoption process, the key to adoption and the key to enabling your people to adopt change, is to solve urgent problems, fiscally compelling problems that impact human beings every single day,
Mm.
right? They just want to do a better job and they want to be able to leave it at the office when they go back home. And if you think about it from that perspective, I know that sounds incredibly simple, but
Yep.
and it is. But if you think about it from that perspective, the easiest way to get adoption is to solve a problem that your people give a about. So that's a huge part of what Gene's talking about.
Man, absolutely. Good stuff there, Greg. Very inspiring. You got me ready to run through the wall back behind me. Mark Preston talks about the importance of building that charter with deliverables versus just the RFQ.
Yep.
Excellent point there. And by the way, folks, if you want to find out what rattlesnake hunts, what the heck that has to do with driving improvement in manufacturing and sales environments, go ask Mark. Good stuff there. Finally, finally, Shelley says employee buy-in, to the point you were making, Greg.
Yep.
Employee buy-in is crucial. You've got to help them see the bright side, because completely agree, because that adoption that you and Greg both are talking about is paramount. Without it, what do you have, Greg? Without adoption, you've got a lot of wasted resources,
Yeah, I mean,
wasted. Go ahead.
You've got a big hunk of metal, or in this case, virtual metal, just sitting there wasting desktop space, right? I mean,
right.
It's, solutions are conceived in the boardroom, but they are delivered on the desktop.
Ooh, that's a t-shirtism. And as an addition, and now we'll get to your third point. And I want to make one quick point, and we'll hit your number three is, team members, associates, your employees, they're all digesting change so much. I would argue faster than I've seen in industry. And so there's you've got limited tolerance there for more change. And man, if that change doesn't deliver and make their jobs easier and make them, to your point, Greg, put them in position to deliver better, because that's what the overwhelming majority of folks want to do, then you're going to you've got that burnout factor, and then they're not going to trust the next big project that you're going to try to do with the team. So that's a very real threat. All right, so Greg, this is. I wish I should have brought my Diet Coke and a bag of popcorn. You got us all hitting on all neurons. So Greg, what's your number 3? Again, we're talking about key considerations business leaders gotta have in mind when it comes to selecting new technology.
Number 3 is less ethereal, less philosophical, less inspirational. It's more tactical, and it is make them prove it. I'm a firm believer that you should only ever believe that any tech can or ever will do what the company selling it to you promises if they can display it right now, not later, not after 2.5 weeks of configuration, not after a month, not in the next version, not in the spring. And this is an old joke in the software technology trade, which is, we said that was coming in the spring. We didn't say what year. So only believe that the technology can, I want to repeat this, can and ever will, ever at any time in the future be able to do what it does right now. When you ask for the problem to be solved, see it solved, confirm that it is the way that will work for your organization, or start the dialogue on how can we adapt this to assure that it solves the problem to meet our goals. Remember, we're focused on goals, number 1. So because too many times people have been sold, is it up the river or down the river? Whatever, they've been sold, and the product never quite gets to where they need it to. And a subtext of that is bigger is not necessarily better. We've already talked about, and I think it was Shelley who talked about some of the massive failures in ERP. It's not just ERP.
Yep.
I mean, supply chain technologies have endured incredible lawsuits. Companies have literally nearly been driven out of business. And we're not talking about small companies. We're talking about companies like Nestle with magnificent failures in terms of technology implementations, and others who have struggled so much. But there are 2 things I feel absolutely compelled to impart. ERP, unless the solution, the goal is global finance simplification and homogenization, ERP is almost never the solution. That's what ERP does. That's what it's built for. They have acquired or built all kinds of modules to do all kinds of other things, but there are literally thousands of other specialist solutions that bolt right into these ERP solutions and can do the job far better for far less and far faster. So when I say bigger is better, I'm saying those big ERP companies are not always your answer. And I just told you when I think they are. So, and you'll often in presenting alternative solutions to these big, get the in the boardroom, why not this ERP or that ERP? Because that's the question that board members, we board members are taught when you meet your pals at the bar or country club or whatever, who are executives at these big companies. And that's part of the strategy. The other part of the strategy is these enormous implementations. So the technology doesn't cost nearly as much, in some cases, as little as 1/400th of the total of the entire project. And the reason that companies continue to be pitched these technologies is because the big 3 or 4 or however many big technology or big consulting firms exist, they make hundreds of millions of dollars, in many cases billions of dollars a year, implementing these technologies. Why? Because they don't do jack out of the box, not jack in the box. They don't do jack out of the box, which means tons and tons of revenue and tons of kids from Chicago campuses crawling all over your company, learning how to do business. You're basically paying $300 an hour for these kids to learn how to understand your business or business in general and define the solutions for you. So I think that is an old and outdated model. I think we need to think more about appifying technology, understanding with that expertise that I alluded to before. With that expertise, you can often create a technology that overarchingly covers an industry or a business problem, and then with switches and dials, right? Instead of customization, to Jonathan's point, with switches and dials allows you to adapt or configure rather than customize the technology to solve your problem.
Love it. All right. And so does Jonathan. He mentioned this when you said the boardroom and desktop. I can't remember that quote. What would you say? You said something
Solutions
about
are conceived in the boardroom, but they're delivered on the desktop.
yes. Quote of the day. I agree with you, Jonathan. We're going to all have that on the back of a t-shirt very soon. Gino talks about upper management buy-in is also critical.
So
Greg?
let's talk about that, because I think that's critical. The throwing away, I didn't get to that point, so thank you for bringing that up, Gene. The throwing away the RFP and having the goal be to meet a goal will inherently interest the executives that have to push, have to sponsor, and have to champion this transition of the company, because it's more than just a technology implementation. It's a transition of the company's business. And when you have a strategic level goal, then it's easier. It's 100% necessary, and they enjoy getting engaged. If it's a feature function assessment, they may never see the bigger picture. But when you start with the bigger picture, then you can always get management to get involved and to drive the process, to champion the process for improvement.
All right, man. Goodness gracious. We got more than we bargained for today, but yet look, this is when we're thinking about kind of, okay, what do we want to share today when it comes to technology and what is really practical? I would argue that the last 20 minutes, if that's not actionable, been there, done that.
Lord, was that 20 minutes?
Was that okay? My timer's not working.
It could have been.
Maybe 14 minutes. I don't know. Let's see here. Islam says, indeed, ERP is only a tool, and firms just need to choose which tool will fit to your business model. Good stuff there. Mark says, people are not afraid of change. I've heard Mark say this before. People are not afraid of change. They're afraid of uncertainty.
That's right.
Maybe what that change will bring, Greg, huh?
Yeah, unquestionably. That's our lizard brain.
That's right. That's right. Shelley says she agrees with Mark, and no one needs more uncertainty here these days. Excellent point, Shelley. I agree with you. Okay, Greg, got about 12:52 here. We've got a couple more minutes. So let me do this. I want to boil this. What's that?
Yeah. What do you think? I mean, I'd love to kind of get your take on all of that. I got to spew.
I really appreciate, right when we thought we'd tackled this topic on the Buzz, it's like we've got the perfect resource in Greg White, been there and done that. But one of the points you mentioned about how we need to appify technology, I would argue that maybe, if we're to put ERP decisions aside, right? Because those are the bigger, more rigorous, lumbering selection. Let's put all that aside. I think there's two quick points. I think of the smaller technology decisions that folks are making because there's a $49 a month subscription fee or whatever. It's so easy to do it, and the cost is so low. But I think what business leaders aren't thinking about, and hey, I'm guilty as charged from time to time, because we view it as a small investment. We're not thinking about the impact, positive or negative, that will have on the team. And that's where going back to adoption, it doesn't matter if it's ERP or an app or middleware or whatever, but the adoption of the team. So that's not just one more thing to download on their laptops or phones or what have you. It's so critical we do our homework regardless of how big the investment is. And I think secondly, and Greg, this is something you and I chat about all the time, because as much as we get approached, Greg, about with what we'll call glorious feedback from our listening family, which I tell you, that's one of the best parts about this journey, is hearing from y'all like Tucker. Yeah. But we also get solicited all the time, Greg. And you've really taught me and many others that, hey, when those sales folks, and hey, we've all been there, got to love on the sales folks, but the best you're going to get is when they want to make the sale. So if they're not responsive to your questions or your needs, or, getting references or whatever, and you buy from them, that's as good
That's
as it's
on
going to.
you.
Right.
Yeah.
And they're going to ignore similar needs after you make the purchase because their incentive is gone. Is that right, Greg?
Right. Yeah, I think that's one of the things that we have to think about in all of these evaluation processes is incentive, right? The world is driven, it's not pleasant and it's not nefarious either, but the world is driven by incentive. Warren Buffett said something to that effect, or Charlie Munger said something to that effect, that the world is not driven by insight, it's driven by incentive, something to that effect. And nothing could be truer. And if we're all honest with ourselves, that is the truth for us too, right? What's in it for me? That's the question that everyone does, and frankly should ask. Look, that's how we were programmed as cave dwellers. Should I go outside and confront that dinosaur? What's in it for me if I do that? Right? And if you think about it, to Shelley's point, uncertainty is what people fear. Was it Shelley? Well,
it was Mark started it.
Mark Preston, yeah. But anyway, that uncertainty is what people fear, right? Because we have been programmed since our genesis of in a way to keep ourselves out of danger. We are inherently lazy. Why? Because we had to preserve so much energy because we were undernourished when we were created, or whatever, in our old form. And we are inherently afraid of uncertainty. Why? Because uncertainty almost certainly meant death.
Yeah.
If you think about the thousands, hundreds of thousands, whatever it is, years of evolution, if anything has been programmed into us, it is don't waste energy, right? Your own energy. Don't waste everybody else. Don't waste your own energy, and avoid death.
Yes.
Simple as that.
True.
Right? And uncertainty equals death when you get far enough back into our subconscious.
Yes, that's in our bones, it's in our DNA. Now, Greg, you took it really back old school to the caves and dinosaurs, but hey, it's so true. All right, I'm going to take one last comment here. We're going to wrap up. Mark, you are a fount of you, and Shelley and all y'all are founts of knowledge today. Mark makes a great point. Training and sustainment processes, they're critical with more and more software that you have to learn, and with more and more people leaving companies and taking that tribal knowledge with them. It's a big risk to businesses. Great point there, Mark.
That has been a huge problem as baby boomers leave the workforce, which they did in record numbers in 2021, because so much of what they did was not written down.
Yep.
Not only do people not want to do it, even if they wanted to do it, they wouldn't know how, because so much of it has not been, what do I want to say? Memorialized.
Yes, that's a great word.
Yeah.
That's a great word. You used a word this morning in your summary that I had to look it up in the dictionary. I'll think of that in a second, but I want to share Corey's comment. Yes, let me circle back. So Corey says, great point on being driven by incentive. A lot of incentive in the current tech sales process is targeted at the CFOs or the finance team, as opposed to really solving the underlying problem. Greg, agree?
Unquestionably. Yeah, unquestionably. And a lot of times the incentive for reps is counterproductive to what you hope to accomplish at a company. You have to be very, very, Scott, I think we've done a great job of that with our sales team. I don't think it's shame to say that we have a sales team, right? Yeah. We love to play diesel, right? And we're growing, by the way, if you're looking for a great sales gig. But that incentive is critical, because we have certain things we want to accomplish for our customer base, and that is to enhance their message, to expand their reach, right, and to increase their credibility. And we want to make sure that how we do that starts with how we engage with people from the very beginning.
Yep.
And you have to be very, very careful about how to do that. That's my boy right there.
That is right. Clay Clay and Amanda and Catherine and Chantel, all the folks out there making it happen. Really appreciate what y'all do. And Clay, I like this. And over the weekend, man, we're just going to take it. We're going to be very transparent here. I loved his email response to us, Greg, because he had heard that phrase from a legendary figure. I got a kick out of that, Clay. All right, so Greg, we're right on time. I really appreciate all of what you shared. Hey, folks, in the comments, man, y'all brought it. I know. Yes, we need to publish a book after today's hour-long conversation, but really have enjoyed y'all's submissions. I know we couldn't hit everybody's, but yeah, y'all can find Supply Chain Buzz every Monday at 12 noon Eastern time. And as Greg and I shared on the front end, beyond news and headlines and analysis, hey, we're trying to make it more productive and educational and informative with market intel or practitioner expertise, you name it. We're going to be baking a lot more of that into these sessions. And hey, thank you there, Leah Luton. It's good to see you this weekend. That's right, Mom. Love you too. She says, kudos to your behind the scenes team. Hey, they're the ones that make it happen, right? We're standing on the shoulders of giants, undoubtedly. Okay, Greg, as we wrap off, right before I sign off here today, we've covered a lot of ground, from the news to your manufacturing, trying to tackle supply chain costs, to chips, which is going to be front and center for quite some time, to your summaries, to again the second half of the show is really focused on some best practices of how to make better selection decisions when it comes to all the technology platforms that we bring into our organizations. If you had to boil it down to one thing that folks have to take away from today's conversation, that you can forget everything else, but there's one thing that folks got to keep front and center, what would that be?
Begin with the end in mind. I probably have said that before, but that has to be it. To how you design your supply chain, to how you select the technology, to how you take in and process this news, to how you use the data from the freight payment index, to how you interact with us, to how you interact with everyone that you interact with all day. Begin with the end in mind. I think the great Stephen Covey, whether you've read The 7 Habits or not, starts with imagine you're at your own funeral. What would you want people to say about you in their eulogies at your funeral? That's the end that you should start with.
Outstanding. What a way to wrap. Greg, home run stuff today. Really appreciate what you brought to the table as always. A pleasure to knock out these shows with you.
Yeah, well, likewise. Thanks. I mean, this is a blast. I'm glad we're doing this. I'd love to hear. I hope people like this Teachable Moments segment.
Yeah, Greg, that's a great comment. Let's wrap with that. Folks, let us know what you think about today, especially the second half of the show, and kind of how we're wanting to bake more, whether we call it the teachable moments, as Greg just coined, or basically been there, done that, practitioner expertise on a wide variety of topics. That's what we're looking to do in the bigger sense. So let's know what you think. But whatever you do, not making a decision is unfortunately making a decision. It's all about taking the action, leading, not no lip service leadership, deeds, not words. With that said, Greg, big thanks to everyone that came out here today. Thanks for all the great comments. Big thanks to the whole team that makes this happen. Scott Luton challenging all of our listeners everywhere, including the one and only Tucker in Johnson, South Carolina. Do good, give forward, be the change. And we'll see you next time right back here at Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.